Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another Room Rumble. Which honestly is this title click? Is Mark clickbaiting just everybody? Kind of, yeah. So if you don't sort of, I think that this one I put the question mark after because it in fact love bombing? I don't know. There was a lot of compliments coming in and things like that, which you'll see in the Rumble. But I've been sitting on this one for ages. Like I put it to the back, watched it once, went, oh, cringe. Cringed so hard, I in fact put this one away and forgot about it. Something reminded me of it the other day, and so I sort of brought it back up, watched it, and went, yeah, I don't even know how to deal with this one. It was kind of I went in there mostly because my good friend and amazing guy Niddy was in there. So I went to Stephen Boland's room, who I'd been in the past, and it seemed to be a case of you're different than other atheists, and it seems to be this very weird kind of conversion attempts where it's all very complimentary and very you have these sense of, and we mentioned love later on. There's a big conversation about what is love and all this kind of stuff, which it was interesting, but at the same time, when I rewatched it, I thought, wow, they're just sort of saying that I'm, you're built different than the other atheists, which I don't think is the case. And I want to address that elephant in the room. I really don't think most of the people that I know that are atheists are incredibly kind and incredibly generous and very sort of compassionate people. I don't think there's anything special about me. Perhaps I'm more polite than the average person, but I think that that's just sort of something I've always done throughout my life. Yeah, so this one's odd. Maybe it is a little clickbaity, so I apologize if that's the case. And I totally understand if you go, no, this is clickbaity. I don't know. I'll let you make up your own mind. Is this love bombing? If it's not love bombing, let me know in the comments, because I haven't experienced that before. But it certainly made me very uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable enough to put the recording away and not touch it for probably about a month now. Just because I cringed hard when watching it. I really did. So yeah, it's one where I went in and sort of Stephen Boland was there, and Brett King was a large part of this, and a lot of the compliments were coming from him, and I appreciate them if that's what they mean. But they did make me feel kind of awkward because I don't think they were warranted. I don't think that the way that I think or the way that I behave is any different than any other atheist out there. I think there's people a lot more compassionate and a lot more generous than I am. So I'm kind of a bit baffled, and this one, sort of made me a bit uncomfortable. But today I thought about it and I thought, why not? Let's just shove it out there, enjoy. I'll try and get another room run, but I realize I haven't done a ton of these lately, so I'll try to get some more up there. I've got another video that I can release. I'll get that marked up. But for the moment, let's get ready to rumble.
Works in that sense for that experience.
Right. So, I agree that you're describing it pretty accurately. I think that consciousness is an emergent property.
Mark Reid, my third favorite Australian.
Third. I've been
second
demoted.
Favorite living one, remember?
I've been
because
demoted.
Steve Irwin, you pointed out, is dead.
Oh, well, that's true.
Hey, Mark.
R.I.P. Steve.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, real quick, can I say for Rex? Rex, didn't you say that there was you believe in a simulation and a base reality, but within the simulation, it's not just like a program. You believe that the goddess literally changed the programming and intervened on your behalf. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I believe probability might have been altered in such a way that it benefited me, but nothing that would violate natural law. So I think that improbable events can happen repeatedly in such a way that they're very unlikely. But again, I don't think that my God is willing or capable of violating the natural laws.
Okay, I may have misunderstood that last time. Sorry about that.
But how do you tell far sort of remote probability from a intervention by something that can't be detected?
I suppose it is undemonstrable. So I recognize it as a faith-based belief.
Okay.
and I cannot demonstrate it to anyone.
Hmm.
Let me throw another one at you, Rex. You believe that there's many different simulations, not just the one that you exist in. Do the other simulations work under different laws?
I had not privy to all of them, but yes, they are modeled for various reasons. I did not, like I said, that there would be so many in my belief that it would be unlikely for me to know the reasons that they exist.
All right. Could one of these simulations be completely different than the one you're in? I mean, completely acts different. Life behaves differently.
It's not logically impossible. Yeah, I assume.
All right, fair enough. What about you, Mark? You got some questions? You obviously heard some of this good stuff.
Yeah. So really, I have some questions about the methodology if it's sort of unfalsifiable and it's a faith-based position. How do you distinguish what to place that faith in? Because obviously, like, I understand that these guys, they've got sort of books and sort of something tangible to say, hey, I'm going to place my faith in that. But I don't like. So where did this idea come from that warranted the faith in the first place? Like, where did the idea sort of conceptualize from?
Hey, Rex, your microphone is doing that funky thing again, brother.
It's pretty
like
funky.
bad white
Yeah, I
noise.
think someone's leaving the simulation.
Being uploaded,
Yeah, Rex, I don't know what the deal is. Your mic was working great, and then you decided to go Rocky Balboa, and that hopefully you can fix that, because I'd love to have a conversation with you. And
He'll
he's
probably
gone.
come right back.
Yeah.
Another interesting question for Mark and Niddy.
I like interesting
Is there
questions.
a miracle that is big enough that would make you guys accept that no matter which God is real, that there is a God?
Oh, sure.
A miracle big enough? What do you think would be a big enough miracle?
Well, I think
for both of you.
I think something like regrowing a limb, or for instance, if somebody sort of died and they were completely documented as dead, kind of thing. You know, we had reliable and rigorous investigation of them, and they regrew their heart or something. You know, something that is.
What about the supernatural disappearance of, say, cancer or a tumor?
Well, the problem is cancer disappears; it goes into remission by itself. A very
Then
rare.
why are doctors always puzzled when it disappears from the CAT
Sure,
scans?
but it does happen, and these things where people heal themselves of tumors and stuff, the body does have some mechanisms to be able to fight these things. Where
to fight cancer?
yeah.
And completely rid it like overnight? I'm talking about like a 24-hour period.
But that's never been
Because there are
rigorously
Can you hear me
reports of
now?
that
documented.
happening. Yes, sir. Rex, you sound good.
I switched to my quality microphone, not my crappy headset.
May I, real quick, with the question you threw out there, Proverbs, I'd like to ask Mark about this to get more in depth on what you're talking about there, Proverbs. But you
Go
said,
ahead, Brett.
and I've heard this conversation from some non-believers where they say amputees, if we could see somebody like grow an arm or a leg. But isn't that what you already believe by subscribing to evolution, that people got atomical structures and limbs and all this in the first place?
No, okay. So Brett, the whole idea about evolution is that you're basically, you're not regrowing them. You are changing the physiology of something, or the morphology, I should say, of something over successive generations, which is a completely different sort of kettle of fish than like a one person regrowing a limb that has been cut off. So I think that analogy completely fails, because somebody having a limb cut off, or a dog getting taller or bigger through the course of evolution isn't remotely in the same ballpark there.
To be fair, though, Mark, I have to be honest with you. One of the things you're asking for to be shown to you as a miracle is an act of evolution.
Well,
I mean, growing a limb.
no, it's not. It's so
No.
regeneration is a
You
specific.
don't believe growing a
Well,
limb
no,
is part of
regeneration is a
evolution?
specific term. Like for instance, some lizards regenerate body parts, kind of thing. You can cut off
Hmm.
a limb and they regenerate it. A planar worm regenerates, right? So it basically, if you cut a planar worm into sections, it will regenerate the entire worm out of each section, kind of thing. That is regeneration. What you're describing is simply changes in body morphology through evolutionary process over multiple generations. I don't even see how they're in even the same ballpark, because there's nothing miraculous about evolution. There's something miraculous about a human with no regenerative ability regrowing a
I
limb.
would say growing an arm would definitely constitute rapid rapid evolution.
Uh,
Call it expedited evolution.
But no, if you
no.
possess the same DNA and organic material as before, and you're just extenuating that out to the same
Guys,
information of
isn't
the
this the
arm that they
entire
had before,
point of
that's not
recessive
evolution.
genes?
Yeah,
That's
not
regeneration.
evolution.
Mark Reid pointed out two things that he'd be interested in seeing. He classified it. One, he wants to, there has to be some kind of resurrection type of concept, but hasn't there been atheists as well as religious people who claim to have been officially dead and then they got off the table? So we've got that. And then on top of it, if we go with the evolution stance, and I know you don't like this, but you do believe that your ancestors grew limbs, even though it took a long time, you still believe it happened.
Well, okay, so on to the first thing. It's that people have been pronounced dead in error before, and that hardly counts. People have been dead as in their heart stopped, and that hardly counts either, because that's not necessary. But what hasn't happened is somebody that is actually brain dead. And it hasn't been a miracle which has sort of brought these back. It's either been a misdiagnosis of them being, brain dead when they haven't been, or it's been sort of medical technology bringing them back from brink of death. So I think you're completely wrong on that one. And if that were true, everybody that's been pronounced dead on the operating table, and they've been alive, then it sort of raising from the dead becomes really a mundane thing, doesn't it? It's just a natural system of process. As to the second thing, evolution is the change of allele frequency or the change of heritable traits over multiple generations. So regrowing a limb literally cannot be evolution, because it does not fit even the most basic definition of it.
So if you don't, one last thing for you, Mark, and I know that you put a lot of what would be the word? I'd hate to say faith on you because that'll get you all wound up. But you believe in the great technology of science. Do you believe that there will be a day where science will be able to fiddle around with our genetics and actually make what you talked about possible?
Probably, possibly. I don't know. Maybe it won't be. Maybe that is beyond the realm of technology. I honestly don't know. Um, at the moment, though, we know that it can't do that. Like, that is something that is outside of our reach. Possibly. That's pure speculation whether it could or not. I think that even if we could, like the amount that it'd be in the future, we're talking about sort of some far-flung science fiction kind of thing. But I did have a question for you, Brett, if you'll indulge me.
Wait, hold on,
Sure.
Mark. Can I
Yeah, sure.
reiterate my answer of what I'd find acceptable
Sure.
as
Sorry,
like
go, Niddy. Yeah.
miraculous or whatever to address? Because I was asked it too.
Yeah.
I put in the private chat this answer, but if anyone else just listening is curious, I have an answer similar to Pelagia's. Sure, everything Mark listed. Okay, if we had these verifiable, miraculous things that have no grounding in prior reality or experience, and we witness it and verify it, and it's like, holy crap! Like we attribute it to the Christian God. Bam, settled, right? Now, I add in another thing that I would find generally acceptable. Now, and I also gave it a caveat so that it doesn't make me inconsistent with what I said before. So there are like unfalsifiable personal experiences that are solely related to personal mental states and not like verifiable to anyone else, right? And that's generally the thing that I stray away from as an acceptable piece of evidence. However, if God gives me some like piece of knowledge that I have no a priori business knowing, like that will require like years of intensive study or education or experience in like a particular expertise field, right? Like tomorrow, like I'm just a master tradesman in something that I've never
So
touched
you're
before.
telling me right now, and I believe you. You have a semi-honest face. I'm kidding. You look honest. You're telling me that if you woke up tomorrow morning and you could play Beethoven on the piano perfectly, you'd
and
believe in a god, any god.
Yeah, if I prayed and got that skill just the
You
next
know what? I
day,
have to say, I feel like that's a fair request.
sure. And I would attribute it to things like, you know, some ridiculous mathematical proof, some, you know, equation for light speed, or like,
The soul fusion,
you know what I
cold
mean?
fusion, or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
If I prayed for
or
that.
something new that saves the goddamn world.
Right.
Sorry, that saves the
Yes,
world.
please.
Well, cold
Sorry,
fusion
sorry.
might like solve the energy crisis, so that would definitely be significant. Or
Mouth running faster than brain. It happens.
yeah.
Niddy, if you don't mind me
Flippin'
asking,
world.
because I think it's that's.
Is that a good answer though?
I think it's good. I think
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
good. But Niddy, I want to ask you something having to do with the Beethoven. Why do you think it is that there's a group of people out there who seem to be extraordinary, capable of doing Beethoven, capable of doing the kind of things they are, but others cannot, no matter how seemingly hard they try or practice?
Well, I when I draw people's faces, they look like monkeys, or like what, you know, seventh graders draw. Like, I would just so those are two different questions, right? Like, I'm saying that these would be like spontaneously generative skills or knowledge that would have no precedent in human experience, right? But you're describing something that of a savant, right? Someone with limited interaction, but then progressive skill building that allows them to perform with extraordinary talent. I mean, and good job. That's great. But you know, where was I going with that? Shoot.
Well, I'm
You get
basically
what I'm
asking,
saying.
Nitty, how do you, in your opinion, or at least what you've gotten a knowledge on this, why is it that somebody could pick up a guitar and almost within months be a prodigy, but someone who's been doing it all their life, they can't even come close? Why do you think that is?
I mean, people have different reflexive muscles, ease of developing certain neural connections to their muscles. Like, my hand-eye coordination is terrible. That's why I can't play a single sport except for maybe DJing something, if you want to consider that a sport. So like, and no matter how hard I try, I can't develop that. However, like, someone in my same age group like was fantastic at, like, you know, tennis or basketball, and because they just have those coordinative skills that they, sure, it might not have taken them long, but they still had to refine those skills because their brain and their body correspond to doing that behavior much better than other humans, like myself.
But like Niddy will
It's
be
fair
better
enough.
than them at other things. Niddy will have an ability to, put together scientific stuff better, or
Programming.
right, exactly. So
That's what I do.
yeah, we have a varied sort of neural network in our minds and our brains, really, and depending on how the brain forms and a lot of things that go into it will generate what you're good at and what you're bad at, and that's a good thing for humanity. It's good to have diversity of thought and ability to thought and think in different ways. I think that's a good thing.
I think this question is similar to, how does a corvid solve a puzzle?
A crow,
Like, yeah, no, corvids. So like ravens,
yeah,
crows. They solve puzzles
yeah.
without they can solve puzzles without prior instruction too.
Well,
they get my garbage can open all the time.
well, the weird thing is that
Nitty,
they
did you say you were into programming?
I am. That's my job. Yeah.
Nitty, do you I know this is going to be kind of a goofy question on you, but do you believe that programming could do itself without your assistance or another developer?
Do you mean like with AI?
Not just anything
No.
like that. Even an AI seems to require some kind of development. Niddy, do you believe that if you were to blotch a bunch of information on the screen and waited a long time, sooner or later it'd become coherent on its own?
I know. I knew where this is going. It's the tornado in the junkyard, but with different words.
Well, you're a programmer, so it makes sense to bring in some programming.
Sure, and in that category of things, generally, no. I would say that that's not what I would consider possible. Of course not.
But if you did have a
All
system
right.
where things that weren't code were removed and things that were code, and you had a system for generating just a bunch of random, stuff on the screen, then eventually it would turn into code.
Yeah, it'd be absurdly large amount of time. I mean,
Yeah.
we'd all be super, super dead, but
Have you ever observed something like that happen? Enough random code that it just becomes somehow coherent?
no, of course not, because you'd have to run either you need processing power that does like calculations and generations like at a we do have that, by the way, that can do like 1,000,000 operations in a second, but you'd have to run that thing for like longer than I can live.
And everything you just mentioned, from the system and the overlays and the processors, this would have all had to be developed as well, right?
Sure.
Well, I'm just curious how you viewed that.
Mhm. All right, Mark, you were going to ask Brett something.
Yeah.
I hope you didn't forget.
So, what I wanted to know is whether a God wants me to believe that they exist.
You're wanting to know if God wants you to believe?
Yeah. Does any God want me to believe that they exist?
Well, I'm pretty sure that God does, and I understand that your next question to be, why doesn't God show me something? Why doesn't God do that? Maybe God is waiting for the right time for you and when you're ready.
It feels like we've seen each other's battle plans.
Well, it just
Maybe
seems
that's the reason why you visit these rooms a lot, because you're gonna get something sooner or later.
maybe. It's weird that a God that wants me to believe that they exist just can't seem to do so. That they seem to be limited or are failing in that thing that they want to do, when sort of providing some sort of evidence that would convince me would be a mere triviality for a being as powerful as a god. So I don't understand that line of thinking. Well, if you just let me finish, I don't understand that line of thinking that you've got such a powerful being that wants something, but they can't make that happen, even though it would be a triviality to do so.
But you're
I've got a.
you're putting
Sorry,
the
go
burden
ahead.
on God, though. Maybe, I mean, isn't it fair to say that possibly God wants the burden to be on you?
Isn't the burden to be on the person that wants to convince you of something to convince you? Should it be on me to lower that bar?
I wouldn't say that that's the biblical model. I think that there is an aspect of you got to want to give God a chance, Mark. And that the
In
burden
this,
on you, possibly.
Well, I mean,
another answer, which go ahead.
I've given God a chance. I've prayed. I've gone to church. I've done a whole heap of things that gave God a chance. It's just I haven't seen anything that would be convincing. And sort of, so people come with anecdotes, which is sort of unreliable evidence. They come with sort of these stories, which is unreliable evidence, and they come with like what you are at the moment, P-Town. Just lower your standards of evidence to include this
Can I
God.
ask?
I may have an answer for you, but it might not be accepted by nobody.
Servant,
but it would.
servant, I'll go
Sorry.
ahead and let you. No, I'll go ahead and let you share. And then I'll have a question for you, Mark. Go ahead, servant.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I don't know if anybody in here would agree with it, but it is an answer to your question, which is
Mhm.
God doesn't want everybody to know that he exists.
Okay.
He reveals through the Holy Spirit certain people that he elects to be to see him, and everybody else, they don't have that
Yeah.
revelation. So it might not be a good answer, but it's still an answer.
No, that's fine. I
So
think
that is
I
my
think
man.
Christian
Dang
sort of
it,
said the same
Christian
thing.
Pike had to come back at this moment.
Yeah.
That is my man right there.
Well, I have to make a disclaimer because it is my channel. I disagree with Servant and Christian Pike. I'm a free will guy. We're not going to get into that debate, but I had to make the disclaimer.
And
Can I
I'm
make a
and
can
my
I make a
disclaimer is I'm both.
disclaimer?
My disclaimer is I'm both.
Let me guess what your disclaimer is, Christian. Your disclaimer is going to be, I'm Christian Pike, and I believe it because it's in the Bible, right? Am I far off?
No, that's right, 100%.
But I do
I
want
know.
to quickly point
Did I-
out that sort of the original question was, does God want me to believe? So this question, yeah, is basically you've sort of countered the first question that he doesn't want me to believe, and that's fine.
Right, that's what you was asking. There's an answer to it. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to admit it's a yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All right. I'd like to
Proverbs
ask my
guy.
question now, Mark,
Go ahead.
and then
Yeah.
I'll let you go,
Sure,
Rex.
sure.
You said earlier that you gave God an honest try, and I
Yeah.
believe you. You said you went to church, you tried to have a relationship, you tried to
Yeah.
seek Him, and you said you prayed.
Yep.
When did you pray? Like, was it at times of great sorrow or stress, or was it just at lunch when you're trying to be reverent?
I think I was sort of talking to somebody who was a believer, and they sort of said, "Hey, do this kind of thing." So I don't think it was a time of great stress, but it definitely was a earnest sort of attempt to get in contact with anything out there that may help me. I guess I was a bit stressed out about studying, but that sort of comes with territory.
Okay. But you didn't ever try praying and seeking Him like when you were at a real time of distress?
No, I don't think so.
Like when you were really at low?
I don't think so. No.
And that's a shame, Mark, because I promise you that's probably where you're going to find Him. When you're really low and you cry out to Him, He's going to answer you in such a mighty way, man.
Well, I mean, I guess the problem is that when you're sort of talking about that, it's when you're low is at a time when you're very, very vulnerable to being convinced of things, and they might not necessarily be true. It's why psychics prey on people that have recently lost loved ones and things. It's very easy to trick people when you're at a really down point in your life. I don't.
Jehovah's Witness.
Right. I don't see why that should be necessary. What reason would that be necessary if a God wants me to believe?
What exactly what be
Mark,
necessary?
if you don't mind me asking, let's
Yeah.
say tonight you were to pray and God would come to you in some kind of manifestation or speak to you
Yeah.
and instruct you on what it is he wants for your life. How do you feel that this would change your life? What do you think Mark would be like going from here on out?
I don't know. I think I would probably stop being an atheist, right? I mean, if that actually happened, I would certainly stop being an atheist.
It's a good answer.
I'm not sure if my
I respect
behavior per se would change a lot unless there was something that was specifically pointed out that I'm doing wrong in some way. I don't think there's a lot of morals that I would have that Christians wouldn't, kind of things. So I don't really see it as sort of. I see it more as a what I would believe would change, but not necessarily my lifestyle or anything like that.
So you already you feel that you do morally good in your life and you're a charitable person and kind and all this.
I mean, I try my best to be. Um, I do care about other people. I am a secular humanist, so I do care about people. So having charity is definitely part of that. Not only because it's good for humanity and humans in general, but also because people have been charitable to me in the past. I sort of have a pay it forward mentality. So yeah, I don't know. I do think those things are important. Yeah.
May I
Mark,
ask you a question, please?
go ahead, sir.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. So you believe in human rights?
Human rights. Yeah. Yeah, I believe in rights for humans. Yes.
But why?
Um,
I mean, why not? What's the difference between a human and an ape?
well, it's because I think that humans have priority in my moral worldview because
Right.
I'm a human.
Well, you're white. Do whites have a higher,
No,
we're closer to you than
no,
African?
because I'm a humanist and not a whiteist.
Right. But the question is,
Yeah.
that's kind of circular reasoning. I'm
Hmm.
saying, why are you a humanist? You see what I'm saying? You're saying, well, that's because they're human.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do, and it's because I choose to. Um, it's because the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment is that we are sort of one planet and one species. Um, it could be that, hey, if I decide that, hey, I'm just going to prioritize white people above all others and just do whatever's best for them, right? Um, the problem comes that that's harmful to myself, the planet, humanity, and it's harmful to everything. It's not even good for one.
Well, I mean, but like
Well, if you let me
sentient
finish, if you let me
animals.
finish, if you let me finish, it's not even good for one race. It's going to be incredibly detrimental to everybody concerned if we fragmentize our species like that. It's just not good.
Mark,
Right.
may I ask you something? Anytime I've talked to you, you've always come off sincere. You've always been respectful. You're a decent guy, as far as my perspective
Oh, thank
sees
you.
it. Why do you think it is that you're not a nihilistic atheist? You're very humanist. You're very. It's about helping humanity. We need to strive and work together type of attitude. Why didn't you go full on nihilism for?
Why didn't I go full on nihilism? I don't know why. I don't know any atheists that are nihilists. Most atheists care about the people around them a great deal. I don't know where this idea comes from that
You should
atheism.
see the ones in my comments, Mark.
Well, I mean, I'm not
Mark,
saying they're not out there.
there is a great deal. Mark, you are very different. You are very
I don't
different
think
than
I
some of the
am.
non-believers we've interacted. No, the way you speak of wanting to help people, and Mark, do you see yourself as someone who is anti-theistic, or could you be friends with a religious person?
Oh, absolutely, I could be friends with the religious people, and
There
and
you
I
go.
don't.
There you
Well,
go.
I don't think
I already thought we were friends, Mark.
I think that
Jerk.
anti religion. I think religion does some harm. I also think it does some good things. I would so I want to couch this very carefully. So I think that some religions the harm outweighs the good in a large way. um, I think that religion has had a special place in our society for so long that it's upsetting to some people, and I apologize if this upsets you, that they don't have a special place anymore. But I think that religion needs to be like any other organization out there of comparable interest. But I'm not interested in saying, hey, we've got to stamp it out or anything like that. No, I think it does a lot of good for people. Um, but it does some massive harm as well, and I see the harm and it concerns me. Um, so I think that the difference is that I wasn't raised in religion. We're having this conversation about why are atheists angry, kind of thing. Why are atheists angry? Because you have the
No, it's
stereotype of,
not so much an angry thing that I'm getting at, Mark.
yeah.
It's some atheists that I have discussions with, they don't see any value or meaning in things. And they basically have it set where I've had a couple atheists in my room where I asked them, would they sacrifice their life to save a child? And they said, nope. If it's not genetically related to me, I'm not giving my life up to save a child in any kind of scenario. But Mark, every time I've talked to you, you've always talked about positive ways that you want humanity to fit together.
Sure.
You feel like there's some kind of form of justice going on that needs to be done with humanity. And that's the big difference between you and some of the non-believers I've talked to. And I'm just curious how you came to this way of thinking.
I don't know. I
That's
don't
very
know.
honest.
I just, um, I am on the autism spectrum, so I don't think exactly the same as a typical person. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's coupled with my upbringing. Maybe it's an Australian cultural thing. There's a lot of solidarity in Australia. There's a lot of, hey, we're all mates and we all try to get along, do the best we can for each other. There's a lot of looking out for each other as a cultural thing over here. I don't know. Maybe it's a mix of everything. I don't know. I mean, I can't see what you're seeing, Brett. I see my fellow atheists, and yeah, some of them are jerks. Sure, yeah, no lie. Some of them are jerks. Some of them are just wonderful, beautiful people. Niddy's a gorgeous guy. He really wants the best for everybody. Niddy's amazing. There's some other people that are amazing. Amy Newman's amazing. She's awesome. She has weathered storms and arrows and all kinds of nasty stuff, and she still wishes people love and the best for them. I actually admire her for being able to sort of love the people that are hating on her. So a lot of this stuff is I run into these people. So I'm really sorry, Brett. I can't agree with everybody else is a nihilist, because I know that's just not true, mate. It's just not.
No, I'm not saying all of them are nihilistic. I just noticed that is one of the viewpoints or approaches. There's a lot of atheists I've met that are very nice and very
diverse.
chill and
Yeah,
all that
yeah,
type of
yeah.
folks you can have barbecue with.
I do want to point out, guys, that Rex was promised a question about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry, Rex.
Adam Lore unmuted and then eventually muted again about 5 minutes ago. And P-Town hasn't been able to get a word in about 35 minutes.
Sorry, Adam. Just say, shut your mouth, Brett. Shut your mouth.
Oh, it's
So
my
I
fault
guess we'll
as
start
well,
with,
Brett.
we'll go,
it's my fault as well, mate. Don't.
let's go Rex, Adam, P-Town. So Rex, what do you have?
All right, well, first, I don't mind waiting because I'm enjoying listening to the conversation. But my question was to you, Stephen. It seems like you think that, let's say that I say the sinner's prayer right now. Is my saying the prayer what's important, or is it God coming into my heart? What part of that do I have control over?
Do you want my honest opinion?
Yes.
That repeat after me prayer that they teach you in Sunday school, don't do a darn thing to save your soul. It's a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Who initiates the contact? So if I seek that relationship, at what point is God responsible, or will God initiate it? At any point will my seeking change the nature of the relationship to be mutual?
Wait, hold up. Come again?
So if I continue to seek God, like I sought God for almost 20 years, and never was it a mutual relationship. Never was anyone in that relationship but me. So at what point, I just assume at some point you think God is responsible or able to make that a mutual relationship, right?
Can I ask you a question, though?
Sure.
And I don't want to put you on blast, but you've admitted that you have some type of disorder, right? That causes you to, I don't want to say emotionless, because that's not accurate. If you put words in your mouth, you get very emotional.
No. Yes, I'm a I have psychopathy. Yes, I have a type 2 psychopathy, antisocial personality disorder. Yes, it's a combination of the two. So I cannot experience most human emotions normally.
Right. And since personal relationships and those personal experiences that we talk about often, you guys would describe as emotional experiences, which I say, okay, if I'm fine with that. Is it possible that that's why you weren't able to feel that spark you were looking for, because of the condition you have? Like,
Absolutely.
Would you say that's a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. And I contribute that to, like, when the Bible talks about God making vessels for glory and vessels for wrath, and I simply cannot feel peace that passes understanding. I can't feel peace at all. So if I need that to experience the God of the Bible, then I was born in such a way that I could never experience the God of the Bible.
I would say that if you had continued being faithful, even though you felt a lack of that relationship back, eventually he would have manifested to you. And even if he didn't, I believe you still would have been redeemed, Rex.
But then it would have been by my works, not by the hand of God, right? I mean, I led a lot of people. I lived the best I could, but ultimately, I never felt God. I just did what the Bible told me I ought to do, and I tried to live my life in accordance to essentially the rules the Bible laid down. But it was never a loving, meaningful thing. And when you talk about crying out to God in like down times, I don't want to get too much into it. We've talked about it before. I've had a very hard life, especially in childhood, and so I cried out to God at many, many very low points, and still. My cries went unanswered.
I know, man, and that makes me really sad. If I can level with you,
Sure.
I don't have all the
I think we
answers,
got to
and
be
think
careful. I
it's
think
hard.
we got to be careful, Proverbs, and we're talking like this because we're getting into like finales and all this. It's very possible that Rex next month might be able to have some kind of experience or something happen, and he could end up being one of the greatest Christians that ever existed, one of the best speakers on this matter. Same with Mark Reid. Same with Niddy.
Sure.
Yeah. I never thought in a long time that Adam was going to become theistic or even go towards that direction. So we need to try not to be so finalized. If you would have met me several years ago, Proverbs, you would have said that dude's on his way to hell bound. That's what you would have figured. So
yeah, that's fair. He did ask me the question though, and I was trying to be as honest with him as I could, even though it was awkward.
I know.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I just trying to see where you differ from predestination, because I assume at some point you think God has to move on the heart of the unbeliever for there to be a meaningful change, and I don't understand where that is not sort of a predestination. I mean, I guess that was really my question.
Yeah, I can't answer that because I can't confirm whether or not you had the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is really that telephone per se that's able to connect you to God like that. And I'm not sure, maybe your condition prevented you from feeling acts of the Holy Spirit. I can't say for sure. I'm guessing. Adam, what did you have for us?
Yeah, earlier when Mark was talking about, or someone had asked Mark, like, what would change your mind or something like that. I had something to kind of share. I mean, it's kind of come back around to that same topic. Is that I think, Mark, I don't know if you're seeking out a belief in God necessarily, but I will just share that recently, the past kind of 2-3 weeks, I went from on July 23rd in these rooms saying there's nothing you guys are ever going to say that will convince me. To literally the next day, I stopped being an atheist from something that happened. So I think that if you were to change your belief, and I wasn't seeking out God either. I was not actively trying to figure out, I wasn't trying to become a theist. I didn't think that I was going to change my mind ever. But so I would just say, like, to share my experience, I think, Mark, if you were to change your beliefs, I think it would likely come in a way that was like from a different angle than what you were expecting. Like, in other words, the stuff that I confidently said, you guys will never change my mind on this. I still didn't change my mind on it, but something else, I saw it from a different angle where some of my experiences with what I now identify as the Holy Spirit, which is God, I do believe in. So like, I confidently believe, like, you guys aren't going to convince me that there was a beginning and a creator and a Noah's Ark and all that stuff. I still pretty confidently feel that way.
It's coming.
But I think that part of it for me was like, there's a lot of stuff where if you're an intelligent person, you're rational, you're critical thinking, you use a lot of logic. There's certain things that are spiritual that it's not that they defy logic or that they contradict logic, but it's just sort of outside. There's things that are true that you don't necessarily arrive at the conclusion through logic. Rex had a personal experience. That's why he believes in this goddess thing. He experienced this thing very profoundly. I've had experiences in my life that don't make sense without a belief in God. So I think that, and again, Mark, I don't know that you're even seeking out a God belief or whether you are or not, but I just kind of would predict that if at some point you did change your mind, it would probably be in a way that was unexpected rather than the things that you're probably pretty confident and right about, the things that are just straight up. There's no 6,000 year Earth, that's, you're not going to change your mind.
Agree to disagree.
That's like beyond. I don't know, not to be insulting to anyone, but anyways, that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Okay.
That felt very pointed to me, Adam.
Sorry,
if I
I didn't.
Doll, I would show you on the doll where I felt violated.
Not anything personal to anyone.
Well,
but
let me respond to that. The methodologies that we use to tell whether something is true or not true is based upon rationality. And so, if you're sort of saying, hey, some information you don't sort of arrive at through rational process, I would absolutely agree. But by definition, that is irrational. So when we're talking about the most reliable way to find out if something is true, if you're sort of saying, well, some things you've got to be irrational to believe in, then I don't know why you would sort of do that when we know that irrational thoughts lead to generally things that are not true in the slightest. The methodologies that I use to examine what's true and what's not true, it has to take into account that I am a fallible human being, that I do have confirmation bias. Even in my atheism, I do try to review whether I am using confirmation bias to say, hey, I'm gonna, I've been an atheist, or just say I run an atheist channel, so therefore it's in my best interest to be an atheist, kind of thing. Is that really what I'm thinking? Is that really what is going through my head? I do challenge that all the time, because we all have our biases. So when you're sort of, and rationality, it's supposed to eliminate those biases. It's supposed to go, well, if I want to be rational, I've got to, take this with an open mind and not try to lead it in any direction, not based on emotion, not based on consequence, like what I want to be true and things like that, because that is where the bias will absolutely guide you down that path. If you want something to be true, you're going to find it to be true. So
Mark, real quick.
Well, just let me.
Oh, sorry.
Let
I
me
thought you were
finish.
done.
But so having said all of that, I get where you're coming from. It's just, to me, what you've basically said is, well, in order to find this out, you've got to be irrational, and that isn't something that I can do. I can't say, well, I'm going to act irrationally to find out if this is true or not, because those two statements, one doesn't lead to the other, if that makes sense.
Right. So I didn't say what you said, but I can see why you would take it that way. But let me ask you this. Is there anyone in your life that you love?
Oh, yeah, I love my wife. Yeah, absolutely.
You love your wife. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you prove that logically and rationally, or is it kind of outside of the realm of?
Sure.
You can. Okay.
Yeah.
How would you prove that?
Well, I've got a very strong relationship with her. We do a lot of things with each other. I really enjoy sitting down and talking with her. She bounces ideas off me that make me think a lot and activate my brain, making me very happy to do so. Her sense of humor meshes with mine. We're both sort of on the same wavelength, as you will. We enjoy the same things. I enjoy cooking for her because I enjoy.
Isn't a lot of that anecdotal, though?
Is a lot of that anecdotal? What do you mean?
Well, it sounds like a beautiful relationship to me. I wish I could cook.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy cooking, especially for her. Like, there's something about feeding your loved ones that's a really special thing to do.
Yeah.
Is that anecdotal? Sure. But I mean, I don't have to convince anybody else that I love her. I don't know why that.
Right. Mark, that's kind of my point. Is right. I don't think you could really prove, because you started out by saying you don't accept anecdotes, you don't accept emotional reasoning,
Correct.
But you just listed a bunch of anecdotal
Correct.
emotional things,
Yeah.
And you're convinced without needing to convince somebody else, right? You may not be able to really use a logical syllogism that proves in the same way as like a scientific thing or a mathematical thing, that, like, say if people were skeptical of love and they didn't believe it was true, or that they thought that maybe you were lying that you loved your wife.
Sure.
You probably couldn't prove it with evidence.
No, but I could prove that she exists.
Right. But do you kind of get my point? Like, I think love is a good example of something that it's not that love is irrational per se necessarily. Like, you don't believe in love for irrational reasons. But it's not
believe in
rational.
love for
it's not
irrational reasons.
like you don't believe in love because of a logical argument or something, or a mathematical equation or scientific data. You believe in love because of your experience.
Adam, if you don't mind me saying, what I got from what you just said a little while ago when you were talking to Mark was you'd kind of been set in your ways. You were already convinced of your own views and all that, but you'd always remained open-minded. You figured if something came along, then you would deal with it then. And this wasn't something you went in search of, but something that found you. Yes. I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me.
No, yeah, that's correct. Yes.
So, Mark, that's as far as I'm concerned, that is how the truth works. Sometimes you go in search of it and you find it, and sometimes just whenever you least expect it, it finds you. I know you're probably going to be like, well, but that is a good point about the love. Now, Rex, you were saying over here in chat, you said something about, is that all you see love as a chemical reaction and nothing more?
No, I think it's an emotion, but I'm saying if you want to, it could be arguably scientifically proven that he loves his wife. If he were to undergo certain testing with him and his wife, I bet you they could do blind studies with people that he does not know and see brain states that indicate that he loves his wife. So if we come down to, is love testable? I would argue that it likely is.
Probably, yeah.
Well, even if it is testable, no one on the planet Earth, no human being arrives at a belief in love through a logical syllogism or scientific data. They arrive at it because of the feeling of love that we know is there and through your personal experience of it.
Yeah, but nobody's asking you to prove that you love your God. We're just asking you to prove that they exist.
Right. I see that, but I think the Holy Spirit, like the experience of the Holy Spirit, is very analogous to what we're talking about with love, where it's more like a direct experience. It's not something you can really show much evidence of because it's very internal.
Well, but the problem is that you're sort of saying that you love this individual, and we sort of say, well, we don't believe they exist, and then you say, well, I can't prove it they exist, but you love your wife, and it's like, well, yeah, but I can prove my wife exists. I can go get the birth certificate. I could go get her ID. I could show you pictures of her. I could prove that she exists. So the analogy doesn't really.
No, he's saying the concept of love exists.
Oh,
yeah, not doubting the person that you love, doubting love.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, when we're talking about things in the real world, I mean, emotions exist for a certain level, and like Rex sort of said, that they're more chemicals than anything else. But I don't. But these concepts like love or friendship, for instance, can you demonstrate friendship exists, kind of thing? It's more an abstract concept and a emotional reaction. They exist, but only as a relationship between two things. Like it's kind of in a different category as an actual concrete thing.
Right. So in a way, what I'm suggesting is maybe, and I'm more focused on the Holy Spirit aspect of a belief in God, maybe God or the Holy Spirit is like that, in that it's not this object or this testable thing, that it's more like an abstraction it's a true experience. But when you try to pin it down, it becomes harder to, write out in some kind of empirical way.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm not trying to pressure you to change your beliefs, Mark. Because I had recently changed, and like I really wasn't trying to stop. Like I wasn't trying to start believing in God, or I was like, I thought I was pretty set in my ways. I didn't think I was going to change my mind. So it's just kind of like interesting that had come up, and I just wanted to share what my experience was.
Well, there's some people out there who are starting to be goofy, unfortunately. Like there's somebody out here who says, I just love cappuccino. $10 says you wouldn't be willing to die for that cappuccino.
Well,
so go ahead.
Look, I wouldn't judge.
Largely,
I don't know how much somebody loves coffee, to be honest with you. I've seen some pretty wild
That's
stuff.
intellectually dishonest, Mark, and you know it.
So in the chat, I guess people can criticize my view, but I'm largely a fictionalist when it comes to trying to say that there is a label concept that is like objective and outside of agent experience or agent labeling. So like we can say like love exists or for exists, but if there were no conscious agents to ascribe those labels to things, I don't think they would exist.
Did you
And
say
if you
Thor?
say they what?
Did you just say that Thor exists?
For does not exist objectively outside of agents to describe such a thing as for.
The number 4?
Like FOUR?
The number 4.
Yeah.
Any number
okay.
doesn't exist. Like there's no 4.
I just threw one out there.
Yes.
So you're
yeah,
saying
there's
that
no two.
numbers and information can't exist without a mind behind it, Niddy? Well, I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And that's what fictionalists generally hold that too. So like, but when you say something like love exists, right? I object to that at a very fundamental level because, I mean, even if you add God to that, you have to give God a new category to hold the belief that love exists.
But Niddy, you don't love anybody?
I do, in the sense that we use it as like a definition.
Yeah, I think that's what we mean is by the way we use it.
It's like saying, does unicorn exist? Like unicorn exists as a fiction to describe a thing, but it doesn't actually exist outside of, our creation of such a concept.
But you feel the concept of love.
You love somebody in a way that's different than unicorns existing, right?
Sure, because that's how that definition works.
Right. So don't you think that the same is true for those who believe in God? They don't mean it in some way that is different from how we just use the term commonly. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah, but I guess that's where like the atheists and theists have to part ways, I guess.
Well, and it's,
Mark, can you?
It's kind of like, so when we're talking about these sort of emergent properties, like emergent properties of relationships, they don't actually have any impact on the world in a physical way or some kind of way. Like they don't, like I love my wife, that doesn't create literal fireworks or anything. I have to do things to make anything happen, like emotions don't actually change the world in any way, but the claim that we usually get is that this God does change the world and is responsible for the creation of it and is responsible for the creation of every organic thing out there and non-organic. So there comes a sort of higher burden of that being than, hey, this emotion is felt by organic creatures, because you're saying that not only does it exist, and not in the sort of pseudo abstract way that love exists, but it actually is something that has not only affected the world but created it and done all of these things and responsible for all of these lives. So it depends on what kind of claim you're making here.
Right. I think though, not to sound like a broken record, but I think that the love example is a good example because people will say, oh, well, there's these chemicals and, we're just organic creatures feeling an emotion. But when you're actually talking about the love of your wife, or, if you give a specific example, you're not going to describe it just as an organic chemistry thing. There's something more to it that as a human, from the human experience, that love,
like what?
The experience of love is not just this thing that you describe as organic chemistry. It's beyond that.
Like what?
Mark, as well as Niddy and Rex, you mind if I ask you guys a hypothetical real quick?
Well, I'm more interested in finding out from Adam that apart from chemistry and neuroactivity and sort of a shared relationship of psychology, what else is there? Like, what are you pointing to here as saying that's more?
So, wait, hold on. Mark,
Yeah.
Do you believe that love is more or less a chemical reaction?
I think at first it is. I think it's also it's sort of like trying to reduce it to just chemicals is a mistake. the certainly the dopamine hits that you have from experiencing that with your partner or partners or whoever is definitely a chemical reaction. But there's a whole bunch
Can
of
you articulate?
well, let
Can
me
you
finish. Let
articulate
me
for me
finish.
which?
There's a whole bunch of sort of psychological triggers in there. There's also behavioral stuff in there. There's a whole bunch of neuroadaptation in there. So there's a whole bunch of different things that sort of I think would build up to what we call love. But sort of the idea of love is an emergent property from all of these things working together. I don't think it's just chemicals or just psychology or just behavioral stuff. I think it's a whole bunch of stuff together that we reinforce and that we call love.
Okay, can you articulate for me
Yeah.
which chemical causes you to want to cook for your wife because you enjoy blessing her?
Dopamine.
You think it's dopamine?
Yeah.
So you could technically go hit crack and get the same,
Sure.
or watch
Wow.
TV because you get dopamine hits from watching stimulating television shows too.
Well, I enjoy other things, Stephen. I don't know what that proves. Like I enjoy playing games, but
Well,
I enjoy playing.
I guess
cooking for my wife
I
a
guess
lot because I don't know. I just enjoy it. I don't.
right, and you would probably prioritize her, right? Like if
Sure.
you're watching a really good favorite TV show of yours, and she said, "Honey, I really want a grilled cheese," you would probably hop up and go make it for her because you want to please her, right?
I mean, I might say, hey, can you wait half an hour? I'm really watching this good show.
Really?
Yeah, why not? Look, it's not.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm just
It's not
that
like
way,
she just
personally.
tells me to do something and I'm just like, yes, ma'am. Like we have
No, that's
discussions
not what
on
I meant at
things.
all. But I mean, like when my girlfriend is running out of ice water, she's
Yeah.
like an addict for ice water.
Okay.
I immediately want to jump up and make her more ice water. I want to please her. I prioritize it. So I guess my question is, why does that dopamine hit override the dopamine hit of watching my favorite TV show?
It doesn't necessarily.
If it's a
She's
chemical
quite
reaction.
capable of making her own grilled cheese for a start.
Right, but I'm talking about my personal experience, my dopamine hit from making her
Well-
ice water over my TV show.
So I think what you're trying to say then, let me try and express this a little bit differently. It's
Sure.
that what you're trying to say is if you reduce this thing to a chemical,
Yes.
then it's indiscernible from any other kind of behavior that generates that chemical, correct?
Sure.
Okay, great.
To a
So-
large degree.
Yeah. So I think where there's some talking past is that there's a multitude of chemicals involved in human relationships versus just pleasure sensations in particular. So it's almost a category error to say, oh, you get dopamine from this personal relationship with someone and it makes that love trivial to drug use, TV show, whatever. That's not quite what happens with us. Like
No,
there's this
I
hold on.
don't think that that's what he means.
Hold on.
Yeah.
And so when those things are aggregated together, we call that love between humans, and it's categorically different than I love hitting the bong. I love cappuccino.
Right.
Like we're just shortcutting that sense of release and enjoyment for something that's not equivalent to what we mean by I love her, I love him, I love this person far above anyone else I ever
don't know
have in
that
my
that
life.
applies because if you take Christian men in the Bible Belt, they get more typically, and it's an idol. The Florida Gators was an idol in my life. They get more of a dopamine hit from a college football game than they do Sunday morning church. But they'll still prioritize Sunday church over a football game.
Sure.
So basically, Proverbs,
Yeah.
what you're getting at is the
But
priority.
that's not love, that's duty.
That's not
The
a duty.
priority of the chemicals, though. Mark, as well as Niddy, are you guys convinced that there's nothing beyond the meat or you that you're basically complex chemicals? So what do you believe prioritizes that cheese sandwich that your wife wants over you watching a game, I think is what Proverbs is getting at. It's a pretty good question.
Well, I think that just saying the meat is being very, very reductionist, Brett. So what I brought up is I did think it was over and above the chemicals, and I outlined a number of things, sort of behavioral and reward systems, and sort of these kind of things. So I don't think you can just reduce it to just chemicals, as I sort of pointed out. I think it's a whole bunch of things. Like part of it may be a learnt behavior, right? If you don't go and make your wife a grilled cheese, then she gets cranky. And then that learnt behavior is, well, I don't want my wife to be cranky because that makes my life hard. So therefore you have a behavioral imperative to make your wife a great grilled cheese sandwich. Now, none of that might actually go through your head. It's just, oh, my wife wants a grilled cheese. Hey, I can help her out with that. It's a mixture of these things happening together. That's what an emergent property is. It's a number of different systems all working together that produce an overall reaction. That is what emergent means.
I struggle to believe that I actually have a persistent identity throughout all of time. Like, because I think most people are a Thesean paradox. Like I don't know if I am the in like an ultimate sense 6-year-old me. Like we just use that like as a shortcut of
I can verify
persistence.
though that you are not a 6-year-old.
Thank you.
Well, that's
Sure.
interesting because, like, in psychology, you kind of keep a part of that young child with you at all times. Like, there is no escaping from that childish nature. If you've ever seen a businessman do something childish, it makes complete
Wish I
sense.
could.
No, keeping track of keeping a hold of that inner child is really important for humans to do. Keeping that child alive is really important. It's sort of that ability to play is incredibly important, even if you are an elderly person. The ability to play and have fun and have that real childish inner child sense is very important. So I would disagree with you on Niddy. I challenge you on that.
I have to think about it some more.
You're still sick.
Mark and Niddy and Rex, I was hoping to ask you guys a hypothetical real quick.
I'm crazy.
One.
No,
all right,
that's perfectly normal.
Okay. All right, so here's a hypothetical. I've actually asked Adam this a while back. Interested in hearing what the different answers will be. But let's say tomorrow you wake up in a dark room and you see 2 doors up against the wall. There's light coming underneath them. You can see them clearly. As you approach them, they become more illuminated. On one door, it says, if you go through this will be a universe with God. And once you close the door behind you, that will become your reality. The other door is without God. That will become your reality the moment you shut the door. Which would you choose?
The God one.
The God
one.
Well,
what about you, Rex?
Actually, I have to say, if it is a good God, a benevolent God kind of thing, like so I'm assuming we're assuming we know that it's going to be a good, benevolent God, omnipotent, and have our best interests at heart. Correct?
Let's just put Jesus Christ on it, and remember, the moment you shut the door behind you, that becomes your reality.
Well, Jesus had some good things to say, but he also had some not great things to say. So I'm not sure.
For example,
people that look upon somebody with lust in their heart as committed adultery is pretty terrible. It's sort of
really.
Yeah,
you think we should be looking and objectifying women?
No, I think that
we should be reducing females in our environment to meat.
I think that thought crime is a really bad thing.
I thought you were a humanist.
I think that thought crime is a really bad thing to leverage upon people because people have thoughts all the time. And especially sort of sexual attraction is not anything.
Jesus wasn't addressing thoughts, Mark. He was addressing lust.
Which is thought.
Lust is two different
lust
things.
In your heart.
Lust is not a thought. Lust is already an action.
What?
If you're lusting, you're already partaking in sexual activity.
No.
In your mind.
No.
Yes.
No,
but not. In your mind, which is by definition just a thought.
That's a thought. I'm so confused.
Well, Mark, I was hoping to get back with the hypothetical,
yeah.
but I will play around with this notion real quick. Imagine for a moment that the female that you say that you love and that you cook grilled cheese for
Yeah.
had the ability to be able to see your thoughts.
Uh-huh.
Everywhere you walk, everywhere you go, she can see every time some woman bends over, you've got some thoughts running in your head. How do you imagine she would react towards you if she could see all that stuff going on? I see you smirking a little bit. Tell me what's going to
because
happen.
like sometimes I tell her, I don't withhold any secrets or anything like that, and she finds other men attractive. Like, do you think that other women don't find other men attractive? Do you think that if you're with a woman that she never finds any other guy attractive? Do you think that's somehow?
Again, though, that's separate. I can find a young lady attractive
Yeah.
and not lust.
I mean, I suppose it's based on your relationship. Like, my partner has no problem. I'm not a huge porn guy, but if I watch porn, it doesn't bother her.
Right.
And
vice versa.
we just don't talk about it. Right. It's just something that I do. It's a private activity. It doesn't involve her.
Right.
And it doesn't affect our relationship. So we just don't talk about it. Like, we don't talk about when she does other biological things. It's a biological feature.
Rex and Mark, have you ever been with a woman who tells you that something doesn't bother her, and then later on down the road you find out it actually did?
Then she lied.
And she lied?
That's rough.
Oh no. Yeah, it doesn't cross my mind.
Or didn't think long enough about it.
Yeah, so you
All right, fair
you
enough.
build a relationship where that trust is that she can tell you. So usually when that happens,
Right.
it's because
And if it starts bothering her, I'm sorry. I'll
no,
sorry
go
to interrupt.
Niddy. No,
But
I've been
if it
talking a
starts
long time.
bothering her, then she needs to be honest thereafter, right? Or it shows that the thinking and processing of what is going on now is not acceptable to her, right?
Yeah, so
Now some people do lie
Yeah.
to try and just be like, ah, poop, I need to just appease them because I don't want the conflict.
All right, fair enough. Now, Mark, you said depending on the God, if obviously if it's a nice God and all this, you'll go through the God door.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed you didn't really hesitate on that either. You were like, God
Yeah.
door. What about you, Niddy and Rex? What would you do? You're faced with the Jesus door or a universe without any kind of God whatsoever, and that becomes your reality. Your simulation, Rex.
Assuming that I could be certain that the universe, I assume I don't have any certainty here other than that one door leads to Jesus or one door leads to not Jesus. So from that, I would choose Jesus simply because my selfishness does not want to stop existing at any point. And so if going through the second door that says not Jesus has the potential of at some point I would no longer exist. But according to Christian theology, I will always exist. So I would choose that purely out of selfishness.
Well, I feel like you and Mark have answered honestly. What about you, Niddy?
I don't know. So I've thought way too much about the ideas of heaven and eternality with Jesus. And so it, for me, like one of the issues is like how do you escape like the possibility of eternal boredom? So like I don't know how that you solve that one. Or like is it still in Jesus world, is it still really me if fundamental parts of my character and everyone else's are wiped away or reformatted to
Where
be
are
in
you
that
getting
eternal?
this definition of heaven, Nitty?
Well, hold on. Like the ideas of like perseverance, toil, the setting goals, like I don't know if those things actually exist in heaven, but I find them to be a fundamental part of my character. And if those get wiped away, then I don't think I'm me and I don't want it. Like, and then like just not existing is like, I didn't ask to exist in the first place. So a non-Jesus world is just me not existing when I go poof, it's whatever.
Well, I think
So, Rex, well, hold on. Nitty didn't exactly. He's saying that he doesn't want
I
his
would
identity
I'm
wiped
I'm
out.
50-50. If you can solve the problems of like, is it really me in heaven? And like there's a way to escape eternal boredom, then I guess I'd choose a Jesus story, but as it stands, I probably would not.
Well, let me throw this out at Proverbs. And Proverbs, are you still alive? I'll ask you this.
I am, but I do want to also circle back around to Nitty's false conception of what heaven will be like. No
Oh boy.
disrespect to you, Niddy.
Fine.
It's something that's spread around by Protestants because many of them don't read the Bible.
Okay.
I'm being honest with you. The majority of Christians do not read the Bible. I've been to 5 different services in the past 6 weeks, and none of them read more than 5 scripture verses in a 45-minute service. And I'm not hating on that in a service alone, but what I'm saying is that's the only scripture most Christians hear. They don't read it at home. So they're getting 5 scripture verses a week from the entire Bible.
Okay, do you think that applies to me?
No, not at all.
Okay, good.
But
Well, Proverbs, I was going to ask you, having to do with Niddy over here.
go ahead.
That is something that I've heard some non-believers say. What if I existed for millennium and I didn't enjoy the creative process anymore? I wasn't happy, even though I earned or got in there.
Oh,
do you believe
no. I wouldn't say it's a question of happiness because, you could say that God instantiates this world in such a way that you always experience happiness. But then
Okay.
is that still you or an eternity worth experiencing? I don't know.
Right. And then the question I was going to throw at Proverbs, and this is probably something some theists have probably wondered, but Proverbs, do you think it's possible for a soul or a person who is in eternity with God, could they actually ask God to end them if they did not want to exist anymore?
I mean, it's such an unreasonable question why someone in total paradise would want to even fathom the idea of ending it. So I can't really answer that.
Well, I know it's a weird, tough question, but if you think about it, in the theology of Christianity, the devil made the choice, and a third of his angels actually decided they didn't want to be under rule this way. So if a human soul were to stand before God and say, "Look, it's just not working for me anymore," can it become non-existent, annihilated by choice?
No, because heaven and paradise is going to be the completion of that empty feeling you have inside when you're seeking God.
Fair enough. I do agree with Niddy, though. I do believe it's a place of joy and happiness and all that. And I understand where you're coming from. Will you still be you and all that? I get that.
The answer is yes.
Well,
you will completely still be you.
Hold on. Is there any sadness in heaven?
No.
Would you be sad to know people were burning in hell, or losing your loved ones?
You won't be conscious of it.
So you're not yourself. You've had parts of you erased. The part that would be...
You're still yourself.
Well, hang on a second. If I'm not conscious of my loved ones and what has happened to them, if they're atheist and I'm a theist, just say I'm a believer, I go to heaven, they don't. They either go to hell annihilated. I'm not sure what your belief system is on that, Stephen. But just say they've been wiped. Me not being conscious of what's happened to them, that wouldn't be me. Like I would care for my loved ones and want them with me. Would the thought about your loved ones ever even cross your mind?
Mark, let me ask you a question. Would you agree that your honeymoon was probably one of the happiest days of your life? One of your most enjoyable moments?
Yeah, probably. It was. Yeah.
I mean, if you say otherwise, I'd have to either call you dishonest or get your wife on the phone and be like, "Look, you need to handle business."
Oh, she doesn't talk to theists. I've got a lot more patience for theists than she does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But you would agree the night of your honeymoon was one of the best nights of your life?
Sure.
Okay. In that night, those moments, were you thinking of your dead grandma or your dead great grandma? Or were you thinking of how wonderful it was with your wife in that moment?
Well, yeah, but my wife is a loved one, right? I'm still with one of my loved ones.
Right, but that's the experience you're going to have with God when you're with him in eternity, assuming you make it, and I'm praying for you. You're not going to be thinking of your dead great-grandma if she made it or not, because you're going to be in the presence of someone you love very dearly in a very intimate moment, but forever.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about like are you talking about the sort of the entirety of my honeymoon night, right?
I'm saying even up to the climax isn't going to come in
Look,
comparison to the ecstasy you feel in the
yeah,
presence of
but
God.
keeping somebody in that state kind of thing, keeping somebody in that state, um, that means that you are taking from them the rest of their life, because the whole point about sort of what you're talking about sort of sex at the honeymoon is that it doesn't last forever. That's what makes the honeymoon special. If it
Yeah,
lasted
but what if you could
forever,
walk around with those feelings all day?
I wouldn't want to. I mean, why would I want to? Then it totally
If I could
trivializes.
function at work and get away with it, sure.
Yeah, for the first bit, you wouldn't get anything done. You'd be fired. Why would you want that?
No, okay, because the scripture defines heaven
Yeah.
as the earth remade. The earth's going to be destroyed. It's going to be made new again. That
It's a
paradise,
giant
the earth
cube.
without sin, is heaven.
Sure.
And it says that there's going to be cities, there's going to be territories, and believers are going to be given the principalities and ruling areas depending on how faithful they were to Christ.
Sure.
So it's not like we're going to just be laying around in ecstasy all day like, oh,
Sure,
paralyzed, I can't move. No, we're going to be functioning.
Hang on a second.
And you're going to be coherent of who you are, Mark Reid.
But just say that my wife still doesn't believe and I convert, right? Just say I convert tomorrow, like Adam Law. I just switch around and my wife is still hates theist and doesn't want to talk to you guys and, doesn't convert. That means
you'd have an 80% chance of her converting after you statistically.
I don't care. Just say she doesn't. I don't care. Just say she doesn't, right? That would mean that I'm in heaven and or this principality, and God turns me on that much that I just don't think about her. You don't see anything wrong with that.
No, I don't, because here's the thing. You're assuming that the love for your wife would be before God, and that's not how we value our relationships. My love for God comes before my love for my girlfriend. It comes before the love for my mother. It comes before the love of my children. It comes before the love of anything in this world. Christ comes first in my life, and because of that, all of my relationships following are stronger and better.
Yeah, and just because the whole reason I wouldn't be myself is I wouldn't feel sad at that person being not in my life. That just wouldn't be who I am. That would be somebody changing how I'm feeling in order to basically trick me into not feeling the sadness.
The night of your honeymoon, did you accuse your wife of trying to trick you out of thinking of your dead grandma?
No, but then again, we discussed
exactly,
like during
Mark,
the
that's
course
my point, though, and that's the relationship and the intimacy I'm trying to explain to you.
That is just wrong. That is just so
no,
horrible.
It's not.
Yes, it is. It's so horrible.
Yeah, maybe it is in your mind because you can't grasp the concept of an intimacy with a God.
But you're not talking about a night. You're talking about the rest of eternity. Like,
Praise God, hallelujah.
That you don't have to think about people that you would have loved if God didn't come along and change your love to only encompass this one being.
Are you saying if you were able to wipe away all your heartache from the past by just not remembering it, you wouldn't want to? The most traumatic events of your life?
Yeah, they did this in Eternal Sunset of the Spotless Mind. It's
I have no idea what that is.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
It's one of the saddest Jim Carrey movies I have ever seen in my life.
It is.
It's a sanitarian movie?
Saddest.
It's sort of that idea of if we take away the things that make us sad and the traumas that we've been through and the things that we've experienced, we're not us anymore. That's the whole point. Like, it is the things that we face and overcome in our lives and the people that we meet and the relationships that we have, and all of these things make us who we are. And you're sort of saying, hey, God comes along, or once you're in heaven, he just flicks a pleasure button and you just forget about all of the things that made your life rich and complete and things like that. It just seems horrible. It seems awful. I mean, you could have somebody...
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Well, if you could get a drug that just sort of made you in ecstasy all the time and just fed it to somebody, you're asking, wouldn't that make you happier? Well, kind of,
Mark,
yeah, but is it good?
If you think heaven sounds so terrible and horrible, how do you describe hell? Just out of
I
curiosity.
don't know. I don't think hell's real.
Okay, so heaven you can say would be terrible and horrible, but hell you have no opinion on?
Well, I mean,
Really?
Both are terrible.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends. I've heard a lot of different.
Like gun to head,
Well,
Mark.
hold on a sec, Stephen.
If
Let me
God
finish.
is real, which would
Let
you
me
choose?
finish.
Gun to head.
I've heard a lot of different sort of descriptions of hell. If you're talking about hell is sort of a separation from
Pick
God.
any version of hell.
Okay.
From a Christian's perspective compared to heaven.
Well, if it's just separation from God and that's your idea of heaven, I'll take the separation from God any day of the week. Thank you.
But then you're going to be separated from your loved ones and God.
Why?
You think you'll be better off then than being separated from only some of your loved ones and God?
Yeah, it sounds better than sort of just not feeling sad and not being myself. Yeah.
I understand
there is a third option though.
I don't feel like that sounds honest.
There is a third option. There's the atheist option, where everything that you've ever cared about, everything that you identified as yourself, will be non-existent forever and ever. That's the atheist option, though.
Why are you saying it's an option? One of these is going to be reality. Like you're saying, like whatever you choose is what you get. And I don't think that's the case. I think that reality is reality.
I think it's important. I think it's important that if we're talking to a public audience out there, and they're hearing the options of the joy and peace and harmony that can be brought through the concept of heaven. So atheism isn't an option. The fate of an atheist.
Why do you think that what's going to happen to you when you die is an option? Like you get a choice in the matter.
Well, you accept God, and that is a choice. If you're an atheist,
but
and
what
you're
happens
saying,
isn't
well,
a choice.
I'm going to die, then you lose everything.
But what happens isn't a choice. What happens is not a choice. Like if you're talking between like, okay, you're a theist and you believe these two things, I can do an internal critique of that. But as soon as you bring atheism into it, atheists don't think we have a choice over any of the, like you don't get to choose what happens to you after you. I know you think that. But as far as I'm concerned, you don't. Whatever happens will happen after you die.
Not really, Niddy. I seen what you wrote out there about Pascal's wager, but
that's what you're saying.
You are convinced that if atheism is the correct position,
yes,
if lacking a belief in deities is the correct position, the most rational and logical, then the option is that you lose everything, right? Everything that you love and care about. Every technology that science has ever done, every inspirational person on Earth, gone. Not even a memory.
What do you mean, not even a memory?
I'm like Elsa. I'll let it go.
What are you
so,
talking
Niddy,
about?
Niddy, you said that you may lose a part of yourself,
Brett,
but you'll preserve some of it.
Stop. Like, because I want to address some of the things that you said. When you say not even a memory, there definitely will be a memory. I'm not sure if you meant that metaphorically, but, you know, we remember Isaac Newton kind of thing. Secondly, you're saying it like, well, you either choose the atheist way, you choose this way. Whatever happens after you die, one set is going to be right and one is going to be wrong. You don't get to choose that, right? You're basically saying, hey, the theistic way, you get a choice. Sure, if you're right, that is the case. And the atheist way, if you choose that, no, one of these is going to be right, independent of what you choose. Whatever you believe, right, doesn't get to determine reality. It's the other way round. It's reality that gets to determine whether you chose correct or you chose wrong. So you sort of
Mark,
hang on, Brett. Let me finish. Let me finish.
All right,
so
go ahead.
You framing it as, well, you choose which one of these is going to be the outcome is just, I'm sorry, it's patently wrong. One of these is going to be true, and you will choose what you believe.
Okay, so Mark, the reason why I brought up the memory issue here is because I think that atheists and religious people alike agree on this one thing. Humanity as an entirety is going to end one day. There's not going to be some Star Trek future. We're not going to fly off and colonize other planets, even though I'd love that. It's not going to happen. We're most likely going to destroy each other, or a plague's going to wipe us out, or whatever the case. When that happens, there will be no one around to remember any of the achievements of humanity. It won't even be a dream or a memory. So, yeah, I do see it as an option.
You don't know that.
We either accept God. we enjoy, we have some bliss, or we be completely wiped out and lose our complete identity, Niddy.
I think one thing, Mark, I don't know if you missed this, but Brett was proposing a thought experiment. I don't think that he's saying that there definitely is a choice. You choose one or the other, and that's reality. That's a thought experiment. He's setting up an artificial story where it's like, if this was the case, would you choose this or would you choose that? And I think that it kind of is interesting to see what certain people say about it. Because like you're saying, for example, you would reject conventional God and heaven and those things. And to them, it's an interesting psychological reaction that it's like, even if you were given the choice of what they believe in, you would still reject it.
Well,
exactly, Adam. Very
yeah,
good.
I think that it's just that kind of framing of it. I find great exception to that. The framing that I can't remember the loved ones that I have because of what God does to you in heaven is not alluring to me in the slightest. But I'll just like to point out on what Brett said earlier is that the whole idea that the human race will not succeed and will not thrive and will not, I think you said, colonize another planet, and I don't think you know that for sure. I don't think that's been set in stone. I think that sort of claim, you don't have a way to demonstrate that claim, especially when we're sort of
Sure, I'll just point at Joe Biden for you. That's one. I think that's plenty of evidence.
There's other space agencies than NASA. This is sort of an American-centric idea that if America doesn't succeed, no nation ever will, and that's sort of an American-centric idea that people have. Americans
that doesn't
have.
mean it's not based in reality to some degree.
Well, other places have space programs. The original ISS was not based upon an American space thing. It was based upon the Mir, which was a Russian orbital satellite. So, yeah, a lot of the stuff.
Is Australia ready to put a man on the moon tomorrow?
Mark, I
we've
want
got
to make
a space
clear
agency.
that
We're
I
actually
love...
involved in the first one. We did a lot of the communication stuff for the first one, actually, if you do know your history.
Right, but without
Mark, I'm a big fan of old Star Wars and old Star Trek, and I would love to be hanging out on the deck of the Enterprise with Niddy and looking out the big screen at all the worlds and all that. But let's face it. I mean, if we're going to be realistic here, on all sides, even the atheists, a lot of them agree that we're probably not going to have one of those neat futures. At the most, we might get Fallout 4.
You don't know that.
And that's about it.
You don't know that. There's no way to know the future like that. Even if America collapses entirely, how do we know which nation will rise and take over? Maybe it'll be China. Maybe it'll be a very dystopian future, but you don't know that they won't colonize another planet. I don't think anybody can make that level of confident statement about what will happen 1,000 years in the future, 1,000,000 years in the future if we survive that wrong. Like, I appreciate that you have a really pessimistic sort of idea of what humanity is capable of. I happen to have a much more optimistic belief, especially as we're sort of gearing up to at least see if colonizing Mars is feasible in some way. And once that happens, you have a 2-planet population. The odds of that species surviving go up markedly, because then a existential planet-ending threat can't actually wipe out the species. So I generally take a very optimistic view, because a lot of people said that the Atlantic Sea would never be crossed, or we'd never make it to space, or we'd never make it to the moon, or we'd never do this and we'd never do that. People were saying that flight would never be achieved. And look at us now. I don't think anybody... but I guess what I'm getting at is the history of humanity is paved with people going out and doing what others said just was not possible. And I think that tradition is still alive, and I think we've got to aim for that. We've got to say, hey...
I appreciate your optimism, Mark.
Sure.
And I'm not going to try to take the hope out of anybody here, but Niddy, as well as Mark and Rex, do you actually think that you're going to live to see the day where we actually colonize planets?
Nope.
No.
Let's limit it to that. Will you see it, or you just be a part of that? You won't be a part of the adventure.
No.
I am
probably
part of
not.
the adventure. What do you think we're doing now?
No, the adventure to another planet. Hell no. Like, who would take me? I'd have to cuddle up with an Elon
in a way,
Musk or
we
something.
are part of that adventure. We are everything leading up to the next great thing we do is part of that adventure. Leonardo drawing his flying machines is part of that adventure. We're all part of the adventure that is humanity, that is ongoing, and that's what I believe in. That's where I put my resources and sort of I put my confidence in. So, maybe it's all for nothing. Maybe you're right, Brett. But, what do we do? Do we sit down and not try? I would rather try and fail than sit down and accept, it's all pointless kind of thing. And the whole point is to see how far we can go. We don't know. We don't know how far we can go. Let's find out. And that's going to be well beyond my lifetime, but that's part of it. We're part of something bigger than ourselves.
All right.
I have a question when you guys are done.
Go ahead,
I do
Adam.
want to say to Mark, I appreciate
I'm going to be wrapping
the
up here in just
optimism.
a couple minutes, guys. But I'll let Brett and Adam
Yeah, sure.
get their thoughts out.
Go ahead, Adam.
So Brett, part of your question was the God door, and you said that it's Jesus. This is something I've been interested in, and maybe it's something we could talk longer on at another time. But when did Jesus ever claim to be God? Like, is that something he was recorded as saying, or is that something that was attributed to him afterwards?
There are some Christian groups out there that believe that Jesus is God. Some believe that he's a separate entity of them, but that's a pretty intense discussion. We can have some time if you like, Adam.
I'll answer it briefly for you. He
Sure.
most definitely confirmed that he was God. He said that before Abraham was, I am. And I am is the known Hebrew name, how they referenced God for millennium. So he was declaring in that moment that he was the Hebrew God of Israel.
How are you interpreting that as Jesus claiming to be God?
Because the word, the letter I and the letter word am, I am, is the name God used with the children of Israel.
Right, but you have to explain to me why that is interpreted as Jesus claiming to be God.
Because Jesus said before Abraham was, I am.
That's not an explanation. You're just restating the premise.
It's also what God said at the burning bush to Moses.
But explain to me why that is interpreted as evidence that Jesus is claiming to be God.
Because Jesus was claiming to be I am. I am was the Hebrew God of the Old Testament. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Right.
This would be an interesting, longer conversation because I don't interpret that as Jesus saying I exclusively am God in any way. Like, I don't see that at all.
That's well, okay.
It's just how any Hebrew would have taken it. So if you would have said that to any Hebrew of the time, they would have known that you were claiming to be God or putting yourself on par with God at least. So it'd be blasphemous.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
Like Jesus said, I and the Father are one, or something like that, right?
He did also say, yes, I and the Father are one.
And so is that something you're interpreting? Jesus is claiming that he is literally God. Jesus himself is literally God.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. He does several times. I can gather and compile the scriptures where it's from Jesus specifically, where he declares that he is God.
That might be, it might be an interesting topic to get into depth on, because I actually want to bust out my Bible and kind of read about it. Because I don't know, it's interesting to me. Like, I never saw Jesus as claiming to be God, but I guess I can kind of see how it's interpreted that way, but I just don't really see it.
I'd be happy to break that down with you. And actually, Rex could probably join us. Maybe we could do a private session on StreamYard that's not broadcasted. But I do have to wrap up. Unfortunately, I've been going for almost 4.5 hours. It's almost midnight, and I have to farm early in the morning.
Sure.
So,
Great stream, by the way.
Yeah, thanks
you.
for having
Proverbs,
us on
would you
this.
have an issue? Proverbs, would you have an issue with me putting the stream up on the radio? Because I think this was a really productive one. I think everybody in here was pretty awesome, and I got to say, Mark, your optimism is very contagious. Very good. Maybe there's a chance.
Anyone is always available to download this and use it as they will.
Thank you. I don't see it as optimism. I just see it as a failure to give in to sort of fatalism. I don't think it's if we gave into fatalism in the past, we would never have gotten anywhere. So I just reject it.
I don't think that we should quit or stop trying or something to do the best for humanity. It seems like humanity's repeated itself over and over. Anytime we come far, humans tend to destroy anything that they make as good or make it into a weapon.
Hey, by the way, guys, tomorrow night is our...
Sorry, Stephen.
Tomorrow night is Flat Earth night. And we only have one person willing to come up and defend the flat Earth position.
Good.
So it may be a very short night. But tomorrow night, Christians and atheists are encouraged to gather on one side over the globe position. And we're going to try to get flat earthers to come join us. However, it has been a hard task trying to locate them.
Mark, didn't you have a pretty prominent debate with the flat Earth guy?
Yeah, no, I've debated Nathan Thompson. I've debated Austin Whitsitt. Austin Whitsitt won't step into the ring against me anymore, so I think I traumatized him just a little.
He only debates like novice debaters.
Yeah, I know. He kind of sets his sights really low, and sort of doesn't. If he runs into somebody that asks a few more awkward questions than he wants, he just never goes in for them again. So, yeah. But no, I find it a fun topic. Eratosthenes is good. Flight paths is a good one.
7:30 tomorrow night.
Okay, cool. That's probably a little early for me, but I'll see if I can swing around a bit later.
It'll probably be a long show, so kick in whenever you can.
I think I've got something on. I might not be able to actually.
Brett, when is your next show?
7 p.m. Central, Friday. I usually have my stuff scheduled up there, but I got to be honest with you. I'll be more than happy to come in because I like hanging out with the Proverbs, but I don't have very good experiences with flat earthers. They seem very agitated and paranoid, and they just keep blabbing and don't want to ever stop. So I hope that's not what we're going to deal with.
Well, if I have to, what I'll do is I'll put one person up at a time and let them speak and keep everybody else backstage and rotate it if people on a flat earth position just can't cooperate. Hopefully we don't have to go to that extreme. But again, it might not be an issue because only one flat earther is possibly going to show up. It may just be atheists versus Christians again.
Can I show up and just hug this globe the whole time and say nothing?
If you don't do perverted gestures with it, you can, yes.
Okay.
I've never actually spoken on the Asylum Discord server, but if any of you have, you could maybe ask them. They're always on there debating it.
I tried asking in a Discord server room, and they were very rude. They thought I was a flat earther, regardless of how many times I tried to express to them that I'm very much a glober.
Was it the Asylum?
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the flat earther? Do you know if he believes there's a physical shield around the earth and that it sits on something, or is it just complete frisbee?
That's a good question. Missing Mod, are you out in the audience? Missing Mod is our possible flat earther tomorrow night.
Missing Mod a flat earther?
Missing Mod is a flat earther. She claims that she has some good evidences to bring to the table that's going to put all of us to shame.
Oh, damn it, Missing Mod. Now I got to take back my
place
brownies.
You could try is the Modern Day Debate Discord server. There's a flat earth section on there, and it gets pretty rowdy. So there's definitely people from both. It's not a flat earth server.
If you guys are already known in Discord, can you just plug it for me? I won't try to convert anybody tomorrow night.
If we're known in Discord. Oh, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. Have you put it up on your
I've never
channel?
actually, yeah.
Specifically, though, we don't need any more, like, you guys are all welcome, but we don't need any more globers. We specifically need flat earthers.
Yeah, sure.
Globetards, I believe they're called.
Right, that's what they refer
to. That's the technical term.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the technical
Or globe cuck. I've heard a flat earther call it a globe cuck.
Yeah, probably. Wow.
I'm going to refer to myself as a globetrotter.
Their arguments are so monotonous that if you need someone to steel man them, I could do it without missing a beat because they really only have very few arguments. And I've heard enough Otts and Witsit banter that I could even probably train a bot before tomorrow night to be a Witsit bot.
Rex, I actually 100% believe you, and we may take you up on that. But gentlemen, I'm going to end stream, and I hope all of you guys have a great night.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for having us, Stephen.
Thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing this video. And I want to give a big thank you to all the channel members whose support allows me to bring you more content like this in the future. Thank you so much, everyone.